Hey guys, Stealth here. Welcome to the War Room. Today's War Room is going to be a little bit of psychology and mostly about cheating. And no, I'm not talking about cheatings in game, but I'm talking about cheating yourself and others. As I was reading a bit about that through a book from Dan Ariely. But more on that a bit later. I wanted to start off with thanking you guys for all the responses I got about what I should be seeing in the UK if I go there on vacation. Or on holiday, depending on where you are from. I'm not sure if I'm gonna go there just yet. We still haven't decided, and I gotta say, we are pretty damn late this year with planning our vacation. I know that some people do that all the way over in January, but for me, I don't know. I never really used to enjoy vacations and holidays. Especially the summer vacation for me was, I think, 6 weeks. And of those 6 weeks, we'd go to France for about 2 to 3 weeks with my parents. So that's my brother, who's 3 years younger than I am, my parents, and what do you call that? I'm not sure if there's actually a word for that. A folding tent, a folding caravan, something like that. Anyway, we'd go out camping. For me, this just signified a huge lapse in technology. As I was so used to playing games, I was so used to having my, let's say, intellectual challenges. And when we went on vacation, we just didn't have any of those. All I had were books. Just reading stuff, sightseeing, and of course my parents decided to go to these old and damn near desolated French towns. No, I don't. Just let me put that up front. I don't blame the French for this, but just being taken away from the computer, from my, let's say, my war games, from my Command and Conquer, my Red Alert, my yeah, I suppose those were the games that I was into back then. I just didn't really have the intellectual challenge that I do today, or that we get to enjoy when playing computer games. So I never really used to enjoy vacations. I never used to enjoy going away. And especially the first few years when I was going out alone with my girlfriend on vacations, I really had to, let's say, adapt to the fact that I could now bring my laptop and actually play games during a vacation, which made it all the more bearable all of a sudden. And in a similar fashion, I think it somehow stuck to me that vacations are bad. They are there to take you away from your beloved technology, from your beloved technologies, from Wargame, from whatever computer game that you're playing at the moment. And you could argue that this is a good thing. You sometimes just need a change of scenery. But for me, at the time, I just wasn't challenged enough. I was bored out of my mind for about 3 weeks at a time. I had very much of a difficulty linking up with other guys on the same campings, on the same spots, because, well, I just really wasn't sociable back then. My brother, on the other hand, still is, and he always used to go out making friends all around, leaving me alone with my parents in one of the worst moods you've ever seen, but consistent for 3 weeks. So that was my experience with vacations, and that's why I'm still quite reluctant to actually plan my vacation. Because if I don't plan it, it's not going to happen, and I'm going to be sitting here happily with you guys enjoying Wargame and other games. So that's why I haven't quite decided. That's the long-winded answer to that. Anyway, what I was going to share with you this week is something about situational awareness. I have covered this in earlier war rooms already. And something about situational awareness came up last week, in the sense that there was a video that is apparently already a couple of years old. It's or actually a little bit under a year old. It's from October 5th, 2015. And it has to do with situational awareness. It has to do with how aware are you of what's going on around you. Link to it is in the description down below, and I would highly recommend you watch that, because what this deals with is that nowadays, most of the time, we are completely unaware of our surroundings. That's because we simply don't look around. We simply don't pay much attention. What we do is walk with our heads down, looking at their smartphones, and someone could come out and grab you, and you wouldn't have a clue. And not just that, they could come out and grab your family members. Of course, it's not as likely when it happens in a group, but if you are, let's say, a lone female, or a younger guy who's looking like an easy target, and let's face it, someone looking down at their smartphones, say at a parking lot, which is the scenery that this video is setting, it's an easy target. You present yourself as someone who is not aware of their surroundings, as someone who is not really paying attention. And as we know from Wargame, as we know from other strategy things, if you're unaware, you're unprepared, and unprepared usually means you get yourself into a lot of trouble. And that's exactly what this video is about, so I recommend you pay a lot of attention to it and try to make it a habit. I, for one, always make it a habit. For example, when I'm arriving late from a subway station, trying to get back to my car, I have to cross through a parking lot which is just a 2-story parking garage, I think. And it's usually quite late at night, let's say 10 or 11. It's usually so that there aren't many people around, and I really find that my guard goes up when I do, or when I go in there. It's not that anything's really happened back there. I don't recall any violent incidents there, but sometimes, I don't know, it just triggers your, let's say, your yellow alert, or your condition yellow, as they always put it in military terms. It trains, or it gets you ready for action. And again, nothing has happened. I haven't been attacked or anything, but I'm just situationally aware. I check cars, I check people who might be lingering for no apparent reason. I check for people coming up behind me. And I don't like to think of myself as a paranoid person, I don't think that I am. But stuff like that, just simple looking over your shoulder, letting people know you're aware, is definitely a good habit. Anyway, that's what this video is about in the description. Recommend that you check it out. So, as I was saying, Dan Ariely, this guy has written a couple of books about psychology, and if you haven't read them, they are excellent. They are really, really good. It's psychology in the sense that he's conducting experiments on human behavior and how weird we can be. The book that I'm reading now is called The Honest Truth About Dishonesty, and he has some really interesting and possibly quite familiar situations going on, where you not only cheat yourself, but you also try to lie to other people. I'm going to read you some of that. It's about dead grannies. As he says over here, over the course of many years of teaching, I've noticed that there's typically a rash of deaths among students' relatives at the end of the semester, and it happens mostly in the week before final exams and before papers are due. In an average semester, about 10% of my students come to me asking for an extension because someone has died, usually a grandmother. Of course, I find it very sad and I'm always ready to sympathize with my students and give them more time to complete their assignments. But the question remains, what is it about the weeks before finals that is so dangerous to students' relatives? Most professors encounter the same puzzling phenomenon, and I'll guess that we'll have to come up with, we have come to suspect some kind of causal relationship between exams and sudden deaths among grandmothers. In fact, one intrepid researcher has successfully proven it. After collecting data over several years, Mike Adams, who's a professor of biology at Eastern Connecticut State University, has shown that grandmothers are 10 times more likely to die before a midterm and 19 times more likely to die before a final exam. Moreover, grandmothers of students who aren't doing so well in class are even at higher risk. Students who are failing are 50 times more likely to lose a grandmother compared with non-failing students. In a paper exploring this sad connection, Adams speculates that the phenomenon is due to intrafamilial dynamics. Now this is where he goes into a completely satire explanation of why it must be happening. So, he speculates that the phenomenon is due to intrafamilial dynamics, which is to say, students' grandmothers care so much about their grandchildren that they worry themselves to death over the outcome of exams. This would indeed explain why fatalities occur much more frequently as the stakes rise, especially in cases where a student's academic future is in peril. With this finding in mind, it is rather clear that from a public policy perspective, grandmothers, and particularly those of failing students, should be closely monitored for signs of ill health during the weeks before and during exams. Another recommendation is that their grandchildren, again, particularly the ones who are not doing well in class, should not tell their grandmothers anything about the timing of the exams or how they are performing in class. Though it is likely that intrafamilial dynamics cause this tragic turn of events, there is another possible explanation for the plague that seems to strike grandmothers twice a year. It may have something to do with the students' lack of preparation and their subsequent scramble to buy more time than with any real threat to the safety of those dear old women. If that is the case, we might want to ask why it is that students become so susceptible to losing their grandmothers at semester's end. Perhaps, at the end of the semester, the students become so depleted by months of studying and burning the candle at both ends that they lose some of their morality and in the process also show disregard for their grandmothers' lives. Now, as he was saying here, and especially the last part is important from a psychology perspective, he says that muscle, or that willpower is basically a muscle. If you are, for example, on a diet, then you're going to deny some food to yourself. You might say, well, I'm not going to eat chocolate, I'm not going to eat McDonald's, I'm not going to eat any kind of fat food. And during the day, regardless of where you work and how you work, you will come across temptations such as that. I mean, food is everywhere nowadays, and it is just way too easy to get some. So, you see a hamburger as you're making your way to work, and you say, no, I'm not going to eat that. Then, let's say you have a colleague or coworker or a fellow student who's celebrating a birthday, and he came into class with treats, or he came to work with a cake, so he can dish those out. And again, you say, no, I'm not going to do that. By doing that, you're wearing out your willpower. You're wearing out your ability to say no. So at the end of the day, when you come home tired, you don't really feel like cooking, instead you order pizza. Diet cancelled, basically. What that does for you is basically making it so that once you have depleted your willpower, you're not likely to make decisions that are as good or as consistent with your initial behavior as you think you would be doing. And there's just not too much that you can do about that. The one thing that he does recommend is that when you have decisions that you know will deplete your willpower and you still want to stick to, let's say, the better choices, the better decisions, is that you make sure that you don't have any distractions. So, for example, you come home from work, you've worked a lot, you're tired, you had a bad day, and the first response, or at least sometimes my first response, is to grab chocolate. That is definitely one of my weaknesses, chocolate. If you simply don't have any chocolate in the house, that's when you can make sure that you're not going to cheat. So keep in mind which elements you want to dedicate your willpower to. What is the important stuff? What do you really want to make the right choices about? Now, second part I wanted to read is that we usually cheat ourselves as well. In the sense that we think we want one thing, and then we completely turn out to want something else. Here's Dan Ariely again. He says, quite a few years ago, when I was 30, I decided that I needed to trade in my motorcycle for a car. I was trying to decide which car would be perfect for me. The internet was just starting to boom with what I'll politely call decision aids, and to my delight, I found a website that provided advice for purchasing cars. The website was based on an interview procedure, and it presented me with a lot of questions that ranged from preferences for price and safety to what kind of headlights and brakes I wanted. It took about 20 minutes to answer all of the questions. Each time I completed a page of answers, I could see the progress bar indicating that I was much closer to discovering my personalized dream car. I finished the final page of questions and eagerly clicked the submit button. In just a few seconds I got my answer. What was the perfect car for me? According to this finely tuned website, the car for me was, drumroll please, a Ford Taurus. I confess I did not know much about cars. In fact, I know very little about cars. But I certainly knew that I did not want a Ford Taurus. I'm not sure what you would do in such a situation, but I did what any creative person might do. I went back into the program and fixed my previous answers. From time to time I checked to see how different answers translated into different car recommendations. I kept this up until the program was kind enough to recommend a small convertible, surely the right car for me. I followed that sage advice, and that's how I became the proud owner of a convertible, which, by the way, has served me loyally for many years. This experience has taught me that sometimes, and perhaps often, we don't make choices based on our explicit preferences. Instead, we have a gut feeling about what we want, and we go through a process of mental gymnastics, applying all kinds of justifications to manipulate the criteria. That way, we can get what we really want, but at the same time, try to keep up appearances, to ourselves and to others, that we are acting in accordance with our own rational and well-reasoned preferences. So again, we like to cheat ourselves. We like to cheat ourselves in the way that you will have a sort of gut feeling about what you want. And instead you may know that what you want might not be the right thing, might not be the right choice for you. But regardless, we think, well, this is what I want to have. And for some people that might be, well, I know I should be driving this car maybe, but I want to drive that car instead. In this case, the convertible. You may be thinking, well, I want to play this game, but it's too expensive, and if I buy it now, I'm probably not going to be able to afford, I don't know. I'm not going to be able to afford that trip to my parents, which I should be making. Yeah, what are you going to pick? Are you still going to go to your parents because it might be the right thing to do and buy the game later? Or are you going to buy the game and say, well, I didn't want to go to my parents anyway? This is cheating yourself. Now, if you want to read more about that, I really, really recommend his book, The Honest Truth About Dishonesty. And if you already read that one, be sure to check out Predictably Irrational, which is another one which has very, very funny experiments. And these things I find extremely interesting. Really, really fascinating. Now, back to last week. What did I do aside from reading Dan Ariely? I came up with a posting schedule for my videos, so for my YouTube channel. It's going to be as follows. Monday is going to be the War Room, sometimes a random gameplay video. I'm going to have Tactical Tuesdays, which means Tuesday will always have a Red Dragon tactical gameplay video and the occasional body language video. We have Warship Wednesdays, which is of course World of Warships. Thursday is going to be XCOM. Friday is going to be a random one. I'm not sure which video it's going to be. Maybe I'm going to plug in another game to the channel. Maybe I'm going to revisit Command. So that's Command Modern Naval and Air Operations. Saturday is going to be Subscriber Saturdays, where I do a Wargame Red Dragon replay sent in by one of you guys. And Sunday could be another random video. So that's the plan for right now. That's the plan for the videos. If you have any thoughts for Friday or Sunday, where I still have, let's say, 2 random slots, let me know. What I can tell you is that it's not going to be Hearts of Iron 4. I have, by now, probably about 10 to 15 hours into the game, and I'm starting to get an idea of what I'm doing. But I just find that I don't enjoy it that much. Now, not only that, but there's also a ton of YouTube channels already covering it, and here's the weird part. While I don't particularly enjoy playing the game, I do enjoy watching it. That's something that I find to be quite odd, but that's the way it works. I don't particularly like playing it, but I like watching it. Maybe because you can get all of these weird events. For example, yesterday I was watching Enter Elysium do a gameplay video, or a gameplay series of Canada, in which he turns Canada into communist, and he then moves on to conquer the United States using Canada. Stuff like that, alternate histories. It's really, really interesting. So yeah, I do enjoy watching it. I more or less enjoy playing it. So I won't be covering that. So any other recommendations, I'm all ears for that. What else did I do last week? Oh, yeah, right. I did a presentation about body language. Just a very, very short presentation for 35 to 40 minutes for a local Rotary club. This sort of networking club that is apparently very, very widespread in the world. And these Rotary clubs consist of all sorts of people. So you could be seeing entrepreneurs, you could be seeing doctors in there, you could be seeing, let's say, people from the police, people from the the firemen, all sorts of different walks of life. And they link up to share what is going on in the world, what's going on in the local area. And I got to do a presentation there. I had a huge naysayer in the room. That makes doing my presentations really, really hard. I always start out my presentations by saying, look guys, body language and non-verbal communication as a whole is really important. It's about 60% of our daily interaction with others, and in some situations it goes up to all the way into 93%, where for example you greet someone with a nod, or you greet someone with let's say just tilting your head back in a sort of, hey dude, what's going on? This guy said, nope, not true. Can't be. It cannot be more than 30%. Oh, and by the way, you look really tense. And I was like, what the fuck? Dude, I studied this stuff. I know exactly what I'm talking about. And here you are. And you come and contradict me at the start of my presentation, which is usually the hardest part, because you have to position yourself as the expert. And he just really, really took the wind out of my sails. I was pretty much scrambling to do the presentation afterwards. And those huge naysayers, bloody hell. I really hated this guy. I'm not quite the violent person, but for this guy I was pretty much considering how I could take him down, in the sense that I could knock him unconscious to just shut him up. Because not just the fact that he was contradicting me, I mean, I can handle contradictions, but he was ridiculing me. And that is something that I really, really find hard to bear. Especially considering the fact that this guy was just an old guy, probably 60, 65. Didn't really know what he was talking about. He just said, nah, it can't be. Otherwise, why would we need language anyway? And I said, look, just imagine coming up to someone in the street and saying, hey, nice to see you. Or, hey, nice to see you. It's the same verbal content, but it's a completely different delivery. In the first way, you'd actually say, oh, it's nice to see you. You'd actually be genuinely interested in seeing this person. In the second example, hey, nice to see you, it's more feigned, it's more random, it's more played out than anything real. Which again, completely the same verbal content, completely the same thing as far as the exact phrasing goes. But it's a completely different message. And that did get him to thinking, but he just really stuck to his guns. And later on in the presentation, again, he really, really heavily contradicted me, and I was so pissed off when I got home. I just, this guy, hell no. And then afterwards, after the presentation, he came up to me and he sort of apologized for his behavior, but only sort of. He wasn't really doing it. And he said, well, look, I've been studying communication for the last 25 years, in the sense of it being a hobby, probably. And this guy had some really, really clear ideas about what the universe looks like, and as far as I could tell, he was completely loco. He had completely lost it. And it was one of those people who, if you start to argue with them, they have to be right. And if they're not right, then something's wrong with the universe. That's pretty much the way that he was looking at it. He said he's a physics scientist, and some of these guys, I don't know, they seem to think in black and white. They're right, because hey, they're scientists and they studied this stuff, and therefore it must be the only way. And there's the way from the enemy, or from the opposing side. And well, they can't be right because I'm right. So it was really, really hard to get rid of this guy. And I was like, oh, bloody hell. Made me think of something that Jim Rohn said once upon a time. Jim Rohn is one of these personal development gurus from, let's say, 1970s to 1990s. He died, I think, in 2012. He said, look, there's only 9 or 10 really nasty people in the world. So when you come up to someone, or when someone strikes you as being one of those nasties, you can just say, hey, look, it's okay. I know there's only 8 or 9 of you left. I can take you on. That is really what I had to think of when I was interacting with this guy. I thought, oh, look, we got a nasty here. We got an actual nasty person. But still, I came home feeling very, very begrudged, very angry, and very, very confident that I never want to see this guy again. So that didn't quite work out last week. What did work out last week was a lot of World of Warships. I have quite a few Wargame videos coming up. Some interesting tactical games coming up tomorrow. I have another very good replay for you on Friday for Wargame. And it's mostly using the guys that you see here. Sparky, Pilot, Apple, Ultima Ratio, Mons, Andrew, and Sivraj. You're going to see these names more often. And don't worry, I'll also be covering other replays, of course. That's what we got Subscriber Saturdays for. But I've been enjoying these games a lot, and especially the game that you're watching now is really, really a back and two. And I'm going to be covering this at some later point during the channel. A little note about World of Warships. What we're going to be seeing in August or September is the German Navy. Now, finally the Germans are going to get here because they have some really interesting ships. It's just that they haven't been introduced yet, but if you start now, if you start grinding some XP, if you start grinding some credits, you can actually get a bit of a head start if you want to do the German line. So if you're not playing World of Warships yet and you want to try and link up either with me on the EU server or with others on the US server where I don't have an account, you want to get a bit of a head start, go for it. Just start out, just start playing a few games. Start learning the game so that when the Germans hit, you can actually really, really play the shit out of those battleships. They already have cruisers, but the battleships, let's say Tirpitz, let's say Bismarck, that is what these guys are really familiar for. Or that's what they're known for. Link to World of Warships sign up is in the description down below if you want to join up. And that's really all that I had for this week. Remember, watch the video from the description about situational awareness. Have a look at Dan Ariely's book, The Honest Truth About Dishonesty. And have a look at World of Warships if you aren't a player yet. I'm pretty sure you'll enjoy it. It's going to take a little bit of time to learn, but if you have any questions, be sure to ask. And I'll be happy to help you out. Or if you are on the EU server, just invite me using a friend request, Stealth17. And if you catch me online, be sure to shoot me a message. That's it for this week. Make it a good week. Have fun. Play. Have fun at work. Have fun studying. Whatever. Hope you have a good week. Thank you for all your comments last week. Looking forward to your reactions this week. And I will see you soon in the next videos.